Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris, and welcome to another early LEGO review thanks to the LEGO Ambassador Network. I received this copy of a January 2023 LEGO Monkey Kit set for review for all of you to showcase. This is set number 80043, the Yellow Tusk Elephant. And this is one that I particularly was excited for ever since the names of these kind of first leaked online. LEGO hasn't done a ton of large elephant style builds, so I was super excited to get this built, and this is easily one of my favorite Monkey Kid sets yet. Now, although this set was provided for me for review by LEGO, all the thoughts expressed in my review of this are my own. I think that was pretty clear when I actually reviewed the Monkey Kid Ultra Mech, which honestly I feel is not quite as good as the original Monkey King Warrior Mech. But that being said, this is its completely separate new thing. It is a very interesting style of build, and I can't wait to showcase it for all of you in the review. So without further ado, let's just jump right into the review of the Yellow Tusk Elephant. Okay, so right here we have set number 80043. This is the Yellow Tusk Elephant, which retails for around $80 US and will be released on January 1st, 2023. The set comes with 5 minifigures, a new version of May, a new version of Pigsy, the Yellow Tusk Elephant himself, and 2 ink demons, one of them being a general, aka using smoky legs instead of regular legs. We're going to start off by looking at the set itself, and then we'll take a look at all the minifigures. Now, in our review earlier of the Monkey King Ultra Mech, we already got a chance to take a look at the Yellow Tusk Elephant, but we will be going over him briefly again just for this video. But the rest of the figures are pretty much new for the rest of the wave, so they're quite interesting to see brand new figures for the set. But of course, I want to start off with just the set itself. Aside from a little tiny hoverboard for May, which is probably the simplest of hoverboard builds they ever could have given her, which still retains the color scheme, which is nice. We also have a bit of a cage for Pigsy to be apparently trapped by the elephant in, but everything else is basically just on its own like this. The main feature is the elephant with one little surprise factored in. So setting aside the hoverboard here, you can actually detach the cage itself. The cage almost feels like an afterthought. It just kind of sticks onto one random stud at the back. There isn't really an obvious way where this sticks on, so we'll just set the cage aside and look at the elephant itself. Now, this is a really interesting build because we haven't really gotten large-scale elephants from LEGO before other than from Legends of Shima, which was a really big one, but this is actually really cool. And when names of these sets first leaked, this was probably my most anticipated one, and this is probably one of my favorite sets of the wave. I think it actually kind of beats out the Monkey King Ultra Mech, and I'll explain why. So first off, in terms of articulation, you can actually bend the legs all the way out like so. This is just an armor piece that can be bent, and it is using the 2022 newer style of ratchet joint, which is very nice, very, very strong kind of limbs there. The back ones are just using standard ratchet joints, which is okay for this kind of thing. Provides it some more stability since it's not like a mech style build. Ratchet joint limitation and articulation isn't that big of a deal compared to ball joints, so this is quite nice just to be able to move that around. Now, the head actually has a bit of a function. You can twist the guns here. Let me get the ink demons out of the way. But twisting the guns actually allows you to angle the head itself. It's a very, very simple function that just uses 2 Technic beams, but I think that's a pretty cool thing in that you can actually kind of move this around, and it actually is on a slightly different axis. So as you can see right here, when you move it around, the head itself swings back and forth for the guns, which is very cool. Nice to see that kind of being a feature here. The ears are mounted on mixel joints, which is interesting. I also found it interesting how the 2 kind of earrings are mounted at different placements on the ears, but I guess that is somewhat realistic. And then pushing down on this lever here raises the tusks and the trunk to kind of have an attack. There's basically no friction in the trunk itself, so it just flops around like so. It would have been interesting to see it mounted on ball joints, but this is alright too. This does give you some sort of action where it feels like the tusk is really moving with the trunk here and kind of having its own organic flow to it, which is nice. Of course, you have the standard stud shooters at the end, which are the newer 2022 style of stud shooters, which I do think look better than the older ones. And what's very interesting is that during the building process, these are actually new. And let's take a look at those now. One thing I'm noticing while building this new set, this is probably the first new mold of 2023. It is essentially meant to interface with the stud shooters, but this is actually a brand new mold. I'm not sure why they changed it, but as you can see, the 6 stud shooters are actually quite different for 2023. I'm curious to see if the functionality has changed at all, but yeah, that's quite interesting, and I believe that's the only new mold in the set, other than, of course, the weapons pack. I guess the new print is a new printed piece, and of course some of the minifigure pieces as well, specifically for the elephant, but everything else is pretty much just using standard pieces. Back to the main model here, yeah, they seem to function exactly the same way, so I'm not really sure why they're new. Like, they fire off just fine. If anything, it maybe feels a little bit stronger to me. That was a very, very powerful shot, and it might be a little bit stronger than I initially thought, so maybe they just improved it to fire it more, which is strange because typically LEGO changes their projectiles to make them easier to fire and less powerful because they're worried that kids will poke their eyes out. But that was a powerful blast, so maybe they actually improved this. That's pretty interesting. Moving onwards to the back here, I really love the shaping of this particular creature. One of the coolest things is that it utilizes this kind of blimp element in white for the bottom of the elephant, which is so smart. That is such a cool detail. I love that piece usage being used here, and it really does close it up quite nicely. Sure, there are some gaps, especially when you look at it on the side. There are some unsightly gaps, which is a little unfortunate. They could have definitely continued these parts down to remove the gaps, but for the most part, you don't really see it, and it definitely does feel like a solid part of the elephant, which is something I think personally is really cool. One downside, though, is that for whatever reason, you can still see a lot of exposed random colors on this model, and it's worse on this than a lot of other ones, where, as you can see here, the studs here are really just very exposed, and that felt very strange to me. There weren't any pieces used to cover this up, which felt like there totally should have been. Even just curved elements here, or maybe a slope element right here, definitely could have covered up a lot of those unsightly colors. And the bottoms of the feet also are colored, but that's not a huge deal because those are mostly planted on the ground. It is still kind of awkward having just some rainbow multicolored feet and the multicolored body still being somewhat visible as you move it around. And you can even see orange on the inside there, and the color scheme being white, gray, and purple is a really cool one, but unfortunately there's just a lot of other colors here, which I think is a bit of a con to me. Now, one thing that I thought was really cool, and I did not know that it could do this until actually playing around with the set itself, is that you can lower this piece right here, and take this part off first, so you can kind of take off, I guess, this platform. This is kind of like the platforms they used for the Oliphants in Lord of the Rings to kind of mount your attacks from. But then, once that is off, this entire thing comes out. Let's remove his weapon here. This whole thing, let's make him get seated, closes up like that, and this is its own mech. So this is just a mini style of mech. I think this is probably my favorite part of the entire set, to be honest. This is a really, really cool feature, and I really love it when Ninjago and Monkey King and Ultra Agents and whatnot do little style of mechs like this. I think this style of mech, it's somewhat chibi, somewhat cartoonish, but I really do like the look and feel of this particular scale. It feels like you can articulate it quite a lot with the elbows being movable and whatnot, and each hand being able to be moved without actually having it feel too rigid, so I actually do really appreciate this. It is really fun to play with, fun to pose, and yeah, it works perfectly fine, even completely outside of the elephant itself. And what's great is that once you put this piece back on here, it really does feel like these two things could be their own two separate things. So like this could be one of his larger vehicles, this is kind of the war elephant in the back there, and then the mech itself is just a separate vehicle for the elephant faction to use. So I think this is a really cool thing. Love the way that they integrated this into the set. I certainly would not have guessed that it actually came with it. And I kind of wish they advertised this on the box, because I think it would have been really cool to showcase the elephant like this and then have a mech going alongside it. That would have been a very nice thing to have. But still, overall, what a nice surprise while building to start with this. And I was like, where is this on the box? And realized that it just sits right on the inside there. That is something that Monkey Kid's been kind of doing this wave, is having vehicles that are detachable, specifically with the Ultra Mech and the other two smaller sets can combine with each other. So they're really trying to integrate these into each other, which I think is a very, very cool thing. And this is built really cleverly such that the arms just swing backwards. These are just mounted on rounded elements here, so they just swing back like that. And there you have it. That's how the mech works. It's super, super simple. You can just close this up and you're good to go. And it's kind of funny. You just kind of plop him in there. Like he just kind of sits down like this. So let's get that slotted in here. Yeah, you just take a seat right there in the back. The arms don't really have a nice and easy way to go. They kind of just flow on the back there. This whole part closes upwards, so you kind of have the clip closing up the top there, which is nice, it makes sense. And then this entire build just goes forwards once you swing the cockpit area down, so it just sits right like that. Put this on, and there you go. This is a completely detachable piece that is very nice and very well disguised too, which I think is very cool, and one of my favorite parts about the set. Now, speaking of the rest of the set itself, I definitely do want to talk a little bit about the value of this. $80 is admittedly quite high for this. Sure, it comes with, I guess, a cage. It's nothing we haven't really seen before. It's basically just one of those bone-style cages. We also have a very, very small hoverboard, 5 minifigs, and I don't know, $80 feels really steep to me for a set like this. Definitely let me know in the comments, though, if you agree or disagree, but I certainly think that this could have been a lot cheaper. Maybe 70, but that's still pushing it. Like 60, 65 is a lot more reasonable, I think, to have a set of this size. Obviously, LEGO has been getting more expensive at least this particular year. They have done explicit price increases, and I assume that the prices have already been kind of pre-increased for the January wave. So I definitely think that, personally, I would recommend waiting for a sale on these. Although unfortunately, Monkie Kit doesn't really get sales too often, and these are only going to be sold online, no longer in LEGO stores. That is a big shame, but essentially you can really only get these from LEGO.com, so it's pretty rare to have a sale on them, but if one comes up, I think this is a fantastic set. It's probably one of the best of the wave, in my opinion. It just feels a little too expensive. Now LEGO, you do have the Lord of the Rings license back in 2023. Could you maybe do a set like this for the Oliphants of Lord of the Rings? Now that would be very, very nice to get. This is almost like a trial run for that, but we'll have to wait and see. This is a very fun set. I like elephants quite a lot. I think they're cool, and this is a very cool brick-built elephant that is completely unlike anything we've ever gotten, because the previous Mammoth set for Chima was more like an AT-AT in the way it was built. This is very much more like a stockier, kind of shorter and squatter elephant that has a lot of bulk to it, which is a very cool model. But with that, let's now take a look at the minifigs. Alright, so this is the minifigure selection for set number 80043, the Yellow Tusk Elephant. It contains 2 heroes and 3 villains, and only one of the figures is exclusive to the set, that being May in her silver battle armor. It is very, very similar in printing and design style to Monkie Kid's battle armor from the Ultra Mech, just with kind of more female-styled printing with the waist on the sides there, instead of just having the standard printing, which I guess is unique, but they probably could have just shared the same torso and called it good if LEGO wanted to save out on budget. The Pigsy figure is also included in the larger base set, and of course the ink demons are very, very common throughout the wave, and the Yellow Tusk Elephant himself is included as one of the main villain trio in the Ultra Mech set. Now, I think that these minifigures are definitely some of the best that Monkie Kid has had to offer, especially in the villain category. I find the Ink Demons very interesting characters to have and to build. They definitely use a lot of interesting parts like the spider army type of hairpiece there. You've got the Nauticon hair up there, but the printing of the torsos themselves is quite interesting and layered. You have some purple ink going up. Of course, you have some golden, shiny, metallic armor there. And overall, as standard kind of minion-type characters, they're certainly a lot more interesting to me than, say, the Shadow Monkeys, which definitely got very, very repetitive. And I'm sure that these are also going to get repetitive as we get more and more Monkie Kid sets throughout the year. But as of right now, I think they are pretty good, especially to amass in an army. Now, it's cool that we are getting different variants of them as well. Having one be a quote-unquote general, I think, is definitely doing a lot of good in terms of making them stand apart, because even if the general uses the same face and torso as the standard minions, he's built a little bit differently, he's got some different hair going on and whatnot, so I think it definitely does make him stand out. Of course, though, the main draws of the set are the yellow tusk elephant, which I think is a really cool way of doing the headpiece. But like I mentioned previously when we were talking about the minifigures from the Ultra Mech, it is very interesting how they're using a kind of scrapped concept for LEGO Legends of Chima, which instead of featuring full animal head molds, they intended to kind of have something as a neck bracket to really show the minifigure face, which it seems like they decided to do for these, so that is quite interesting. Pixie himself is nice. He has some printed legs, and it's a different color scheme than we've seen before with his exposed chest, which is quite interesting to see for a character like this. But overall, I think the minifigure for Pixie is just alright. It is a cool color scheme, but I feel like he's just missing something with no hat on. I don't know what it is, but just having the exposed stud on the top of his head feels wrong to me somehow. But I guess he just didn't want to wear his hat this time. They didn't come up with a different hat for him. Maybe even if they gave him a rice hat or something. I don't know. It just feels very odd to be exposed with no type of hat. May herself, who is the exclusive figure of the set, and I guess the quote-unquote collectible for this particular set, is being able to build her sword. However, you get the same exact weapon piece in all the sets, so it's not really a collectible, but I think it's nicely detailed. The metallic silver torso is very cool, and again, it is using a lot of the same printing as the Monkey Kid version, so for whatever reason, I guess the budget for this time around for the Monkey Kid figures was a little bit decreased, because we usually get completely unique outfits top to bottom with dual molding and maybe even arm printing, but they're reusing some of the prints for the main heroes there, which is kind of odd, but maybe they just decided to cut down on budget for the figures this year. That being said, it is still really good. I just wish we got a helmet to go alongside this, because she's had helmets in the past which look really cool, and I think it would have been interesting to get another new printing for the Dragon Horse Warrior helmet. Overall, I think the figure selection is pretty good. There isn't really anyone else I think should have been included in the set. 5 minifigures for $80 is okay. It's pretty average, to be honest, and I think the selection itself is good because there is no minifigure here that feels like filler. One thing that Monkey Kid did in the earlier waves was include kind of filler civilian figures, which were cool to flesh out the world, but eventually got kind of repetitive when a larger set would include only a couple of combat characters and just a ton of civilians with reused prints and whatnot. So it's good that we're getting main characters here and villain characters for the minions, and I think overall this is a pretty solid minifigure selection, plus that weapon for the yellow tusk elephant is a very, very fun one as well. Alright, and with that we have summed up our review of the Yellow Tusk Elephant, a really interesting build for LEGO Monkey Kid, definitely one of my favorites and one of the standouts of this wave. Now let me know down in the comments below, what do you think of this model? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Do you think it's worth the $80 price point? And with that, I think we've about summed up this review. Thank you all so much for tuning into Duck Bricks, and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Thanks, and bye for now.